Good afternoon. Welcome to the 55th anniversary celebration of the Maryland State Police Aviation Command's Trooper 2. My name is Elena Russo. I'm with the Office of Media Communications with the Maryland State Police. I'm honored to be here today to MC this program. At this point, for troopers in uniform and everybody in the audience, I ask that you please rise for the presentation of colors and follow the commands of the color guard. Please remain standing for the national anthem, today sung by Trooper Micah Graff, a graduate from our 160th Academy class from the La Plata Barrack. And then please remain standing for our invocation today, provided by Pastor Mike Adams from our Aviation Command.
Detail. Oh. Left. Face. Present. Oh.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hail at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Order. Oh.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me okay now? Oh, good. Before we begin our formal program, let us all bow our heads in a moment of silence for pilot Stephen H. Bunker, flight medic Mickey C. Lippy, Waldorf Volunteer Fire Department medical provider Tanya Mallard, and patient Ashley Younger, who tragically lost their lives while on board Trooper 2 on September the 27th, 2008. And let us also remember Prince George's County firefighter, paramedic DeMayor Lloyd, who passed away after a medical emergency following his shift on May the 30th, 2026. Amen. Let us now pray. Heavenly Father, we come together today to give thanks for the gift of life and the courageous professionals who protect it. We remember the accidents that brought us to our knees and the swift wings that brought us hope in our darkest hours. We ask your blessing upon this medical flight team. Guide the hands of the pilots and medics who turned the sky into a pathway of healing. Bless the patients they have carried and the families whose lives were forever changed by their care. Continue to comfort those families who have lost loved ones, giving service and care to others. May your spirit be with us in this place, filling us with gratitude for every rescue and every second chance of life. In your holy name we pray this. Amen.
Detail, right, face, forward, march.
Thank you. Please be seated. I'd now like to briefly introduce you to the members of the dais. Maryland's 10th Lieutenant Governor and second woman to hold the position. Please welcome the Honorable Aruna Miller. Superintendent of the Maryland State Police, Colonel Michael A. Jackson. Of course, you met Pastor Mike Adams, our aviation chaplain. Dr. Doug Flocare, our State Aeromedical Director for MIMS, which is the Maryland Institute for Emergency Medical Services Systems. He's also our Medical Director for the MSP Aviation Command. Dan McDonald, civilian pilot with Maryland State Police Aviation. Maryland State Senator Malcolm Augustine, representing District 47 here in Prince George's. And representing District 24, Prince George's County Delegate Derek Coley. Thank you. We have so many honored guests with us today, from our EMS partners, our Maryland Firemen's Association, our Shock Trauma, to University of Maryland School of Medicine, and of course MIMS, again, the Maryland Institute for Emergency Medical Services Systems. I'll try to recognize everybody I was able to see on the check-in list today. If I forget you, I am so sorry. I apologize. We thank everybody for being here today. I know Dr. Ted Delbridge, thank you for being with us today, the Executive Director of MIMS. We have a lot of board members from MIMS who've joined us today. Charles Simpson Jr., President of the Maryland State Firefighters Association. We've got honored guests also to include Senator Nick Charles, Delegate Kim Taylor, representatives from the Prince George's County Council, Mark Trader, our second Vice President from the Maryland Fire Chiefs Association, our first Vice President, Lee Lutz, from the Maryland State Firefighters Association. And I know Tim Adams could not be with us today. He's with the Prince George's County Council, representing District 4, but he did drop off a proclamation for our Aviation Command. Thank you all for your presence here today. This is a very special event for our entire Aviation Command, not just Trooper 2, so thank you again for being here. At this point, it's my honor to introduce you to Maryland's Lieutenant Governor, Aruna K. Miller.
Elena, thank you so much for your warm introduction and how you always communicate so well for the Maryland State Police. Good afternoon, everyone. Pastor Adams, thank you so much for your very sincere and thoughtful words for those members of the service that we have lost, and continue to pray for those that are still with us. It's great to be joining you at the Prince George's Stadium, home of the Chesapeake Bay Sox. Now, I used to call them the Bowie Bay Sox, but apparently just recently changed. So I was thinking as I came here, what does Trooper 2 have to do with baseball? A lot, actually. A baseball game is about getting players to home base safely. Trooper 2's one mission is getting Marylanders home safely. through every single season. And like any championship team, success always comes down to the people wearing the uniform. So Colonel Jackson, every great team needs a manager in the dugout who sets the gold standard. So thank you for your service to our nation and to your service to the people of Maryland. Sergeant Singleton and the entire Trooper 2 team, thank you. You really are the roster, and what a roster it is. What you do matters every single day. And Dr. Flocare, every championship team has a coach who builds the system that outlasts any single season. Thank you for your decades of leadership that helped make Maryland's aviation and trauma care system a model for the entire nation. So it is an honor to join you, everyone here, and Team Maryland as we celebrate 55 years of service by Trooper 2. Thank you to our friends and partners in the Maryland General Assembly, Senator Augustine, Delegates Kim Taylor, Mark Chang, and of course, Delegate Derek Coley, who is here today. As a civil engineer, I was taught that when you design roadways, bridges, and infrastructure, you don't design for the average day. You design for the day that you hope will never come. But sometimes the worst days still come. And when it does, it's Trooper 2 that is already in the air. The men and women of Trooper 2 stand ready 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And the calls come. Roughly 400 medevac missions every year, another 100 in law enforcement, search and rescue, homeland security, and disaster response. And what makes this all possible? The pilots. Pilots like Dan McDonald, whose expertise means that when the worst day comes, someone extraordinary is at the controls. The flight paramedics delivering life-saving care in the air. The maintenance teams who make sure every aircraft is ready before the calls come. And the families who don't wear the uniform but bear the weight of it all. Today, we also pause to honor those who gave their lives in service to this mission. Their sacrifice is part of every flight that followed. It always will be. On behalf of Governor Moore and the entire state of Maryland, thank you. And here at the ballpark, there's no better way to say it. For 55 years, you have been bringing Marylanders home safely. That is a legacy worth celebrating. So congratulations, Trooper 2. God bless you all and the men and women of the Maryland State Police. Now, before we continue, we have a few citations we'd like to present and to recognize this momentous occasion. I'd like to invite Maryland State Police Superintendent Colonel Michael A. Jackson, as well as Aviation Commander Major Tegali Ferry, and Troopers 2 Commander Sergeant Reginald Singleton to join me. This is a citation on behalf of the people of Maryland, and it's signed by Governor Moore, myself, and Secretary Susan Lee, and says, Governor of the State of Maryland to Trooper 2, Washington Section, 55th anniversary greetings. Be it known that on behalf of the citizens of the state, in recognition of your 55 years of remarkable service as emergency medical aviation crews of the Maryland State Police Aviation Command, we're pleased to confer upon you this governor's citation. Thank you all. Our next citation recipient is someone whose impact on emergency medicine and aviation safety in Maryland cannot be overstated. Since 1989, Dr. Douglas Flocare has served as the state aeromedical director at MIE-MSS and medical director of the Maryland State Police Aviation Command. For more than 3 decades, he has helped shape one of the nation's premier aeromedical programs and has been a driving force behind the innovations that save lives every day, including Maryland's groundbreaking Blood on Board initiative, which allows medevac crews to administer life-saving blood transfusions before patients even reach the hospital. With more than 45 years of experience in emergency and medical services, Dr. Flocare's leadership, expertise, and commitment to patient care have strengthened Maryland's emergency response system and improved outcomes for countless Marylanders. Dr. Flocare, please join me, as well as Colonel Jackson, if you can also come up. Thank you.
We're looking here, right here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, our next speaker has dedicated his life to public service. After serving in the United States Marine Corps, he went on to serve more than 20 years with the Prince George's County Sheriff's Office, including 8 years as the elected sheriff. In 2014, he was elected to the Maryland General Assembly, where he represented the citizens of Calvert, Charles, and Prince George's counties. And it was during this time he and I both served together at the Maryland House of the Appropriations Committee. This February, he was unanimously confirmed by the state Senate as the superintendent of Maryland Department of State Police. Throughout his career, his leadership, integrity, and commitment to service have remained constant. Please help me welcome a servant leader, Colonel Michael A. Jackson.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I get it. Beautiful day. It's a beautiful day, terrific event, and it's a fitting event for those of us who understand what being of service is. It's an honor for me to be here today to celebrate the 55 years of Trooper 2 and remarkable services of our Aviation Command that has been provided for over a half-century. When you hear the sound of the Maryland State Police helicopter overhead, you truly know, and we already know, that call for service has been answered by Maryland's finest. We cannot talk about one of the most important missions of our Aviation Command without first mentioning the work of Dr. R. Adams Cowley. Dr. R. Adams Cowley is affectionately known as the father and innovator of trauma care here in Maryland. It was in 1970 when Dr. R. Adams Cowley pursued a revolutionary statewide system of emergency care known today as medevac. Since the inception of the medevac program and the Maryland State Police Aviation Command, our agency has partnered with our medical counterparts to carry out our shared mission of responding to moments of crisis. Our aviation crews operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, performing search and rescue missions and supporting our law enforcement and EMS partners on the ground. With every mission, our crews work together to save lives. While Trooper 2 is based in Prince George's County at Joint Base Andrews, calls for service extend farther than those of any other aviation section in our fleet. In a single shift, Trooper 2 may respond to a hoist rescue in Frederick County, a heart attack patient in St. Mary's County, a pedestrian struck in Prince George's County, or even a mayday call on the Chesapeake Bay. And in that same shift, they may transport patients between hospitals in Baltimore, Largo, and Washington, D.C. Trooper 2's services, like the rest of our public safety service environment, however, comes without a price. The commemoration of this important anniversary would be incomplete if not mentioned again about the loss of our members of Trooper 2 almost 18 years ago. Some of us remember that night vividly. During that time, on September 27, 2008, I served as the sheriff of Prince George's County and had intensive conversations that evening and through the subsequent days with then Superintendent Terrence Sheridan. On that evening, while attempting to deliver 2 patients to a trauma center, the crew of Trooper 2 encountered very poor weather. While diverting back to home base, the helicopter crashed at Walker Mill Park, which is not that far from here in the county. Thank you, Pastor, for mentioning the names of our fallen heroes, Pilot Stephen Bunker, Flight Paramedic Trooper First Class Mickey Lippy, Waldorf Volunteer Fire Department EMT Tanya Mallard, and patient Ashley Younger, who were killed in the crash. There was a second patient on that flight. That patient survived, but was critically injured, Jordan Wells. The sacrifices made by these heroes will never be forgotten, and their legacy will forever live on. To date, the Maryland State Police Aviation Command has transported over 165,000 patients and has contributed to saving thousands of lives, thus earning itself a worldwide reputation as a leader in pre-hospital trauma care and medevac. Today's a great day for Trooper 2, a terrific day, and for the entire Maryland State Police Aviation Command, for our partners in the fire and rescue services, to our Maryland Elite Network of trauma care providers, and for all of those who benefit from the dedicated services of the most coordinated and well-equipped emergency medical services system in the world. In closing, I'd like to thank Governor Wes Moore, my former colleague and now colleague, Lieutenant Governor Aruna Miller, for my former colleagues and partners within the Maryland General Assembly, for standing behind us with your support. Without your support, our work cannot and would not continue. So on behalf of the entire department, Maryland State Police, I want to publicly thank you, Trooper 2, the crew of Trooper 2, both past and present, for your service and the dedication to our communities and those who travel through this state. It is an honor to be of service with you. Thank you. So my next assignment is to introduce the next speaker. You heard a little bit about him a second ago, but with over 45 years of emergency medical services experience, Dr. Douglas Flocare serves as the Aeromedical Director at the Maryland Institute of Emergency Medical Services Systems, MIMS, and also serves as the Medical Director for the Maryland State Police Aviation Command since 1989. So we are honored to have you here with us. Dr. Flocare played an integral role in developing Maryland's Blood on Board initiative, which empowered all of our medevac helicopters to carry and administer whole blood for emergency pre-hospital transfusions. That is incredible. That's what makes us Maryland's finest. Please help us welcome Dr. Douglas Flocare.
If tragedy strikes, don't lose hope. Transform it into an opportunity to make things better. We'll come back to that in a few minutes. Lieutenant Governor, Colonel, esteemed members of the dais and of the audience, good afternoon. The 55th anniversary of Trooper 2, a very important part of our state medevac system, as are all the bases in our program. But there's a special significance to the creation of Trooper 2. It marked the beginning of a true system of trauma care, something that didn't yet exist anyplace in America, or for that matter, in the world. 55 years ago, 1971. Let's consider what existed at that time. In 1966, Dr. Cowley started the first trauma center in the United States. Trauma centers, it's a very common term now, but it was unheard of at the time. Most people probably wouldn't know exactly what that meant if they heard the term trauma center. The Cook County Trauma Center also started in 1966, but we're pretty sure Baltimore's was first. In 1968 was the first paramedics in the United States from Freedom House Ambulance in Pittsburgh, where Dr. Peter Schaffer created a 34-week course to treat unemployed African-American men in the city of Pittsburgh to become true lifesavers. It wasn't until the following year, 1969, that paramedics began in Los Angeles and in Seattle. Also in 1968, it was the introduction of the 911 number for people to have one number to be able to call for emergencies. Actually, it started out as 911, but it turned out that some people, in the panic of a moment, weren't able to find the 11 on the phone, so they started calling it 911. In 1970, of course, was the first civilian medevac in the United States on March 19th by the Maryland State Police. The medical care on board was at a basic life support level. In fact, all pre-hospital care in Maryland was at a BOS level. Pre-hospital advanced life support didn't arrive in Maryland until 1974. And if you called for an ambulance at that time, you might get an ambulance, or you might get the hearse from the local funeral home with a red light on it. And when they arrived, the people driving the ambulance didn't have any medical training. And if you made your call for an ambulance, it wasn't by 911, because although it was started to exist, 911 wasn't implemented, didn't start to be implemented in Maryland until 1980. In 1970, the same year as our first medevac, which it wouldn't have been Trooper 1 because there weren't any other numbers yet, so just our trooper did their first call. The first emergency medicine residency training program in the United States began in Cincinnati. Of course, the first emergency physicians wouldn't graduate until 3 years later. At the time, hospital emergency departments were covered by various different ways. Some of the smaller emergency departments were actually closed at night. Some of the community hospitals, when my father began practice as an obstetrician gynecologist in 1969, in the community hospital, fortunately, the year before, the hospital had stopped the practice of having each doctor on the medical staff required to take one night each month in covering the emergency department. So you can imagine what an assortment of characters that would have been. So in 1971, we had the flight, the creation of Trooper 2. There was no CPR yet. 1972 was the first public training of CPR. 1970, was the first year that the Seattle firefighters were trained in CPR. For those of you that aren't aware, CPR actually had its roots in Baltimore, where Dr. Peter Saffer at the Baltimore City Hospital developed the method of mouth-to-mouth resuscitation in 1956. And in 1957, they rediscovered closed chest massage, they called it, but chest compressions at Johns Hopkins Hospital. That year, Hopkins also did the first successful external defibrillation. So a big change at this time is 1972 with the television show Emergency. And all of a sudden, people knew about advanced pre-hospital care. Countless number of people decided to become paramedics because of that television show, or become emergency physicians, or to go into this general line of work. But it also created an expectation among people, among the public, of wanting that type of care available in the areas where they lived. In the following year, 1973, was the Emergency Medical Services Act that provided funding and a blueprint for having an EMS program, and it resulted in the start of over 300 EMS programs across the country. In 1974, Montgomery County put 2 mobile intensive care units out in the field. In the same year, Harford County started training in CRT, cardiac rescue technicians. The following year, Montgomery started to put CRTs out on ambulances. And that year, the EMS division of the Maryland Department of Health, the precursor of MIMS, published the first regulations for cardiac rescue technician training. And finally, in 1975, the American Heart Association had the first advanced cardiac life support course. So you can imagine in 1971, when there are now 2 helicopters in Maryland moving patients quickly to trauma centers, this was quite an event. It marked the beginning, as I said earlier, of a true trauma system. It was the first time where patients over a broad area would be taken to a hospital that was best suited to their needs. Eventually, this led to trauma patients being brought to a trauma center, pediatric trauma patients to a pediatric trauma center, burn patients to a burn center, spinal cord injury patients to a spine center, and so forth. What was going on throughout the rest of the country was helicopters tend to be based at hospitals, and those helicopters tended to bring their patients back to the home hospital that created them. So through the 70s and 80s, additional hospitals across Maryland became trauma centers, and additional helicopter bases were added to our state so that all the state could be covered. I remember vividly in 1979 when I was in college at the University of Buffalo, going home for Thanksgiving break and talking to one of my fellow volunteer firefighter friends who had come down to College Park to get a degree in fire sciences, and told me about this very cool system they had in Maryland where they would land helicopters on the interstate and bring patients to trauma centers. And I was just fascinated by this idea. It was beyond my wildest imagination that 10 years later I would be proud to become their medical director. In the early years of helicopter transport, we started with the Korean War, and the focus was on getting patients to medical care quickly. This was what Dr. Colley experienced as a thoracic surgeon in Korea during the Korean War, the idea of needing to treat the problem quickly. In fact, none of the improvement was based on the care they received because the patients were outside the helicopter. They got no care on the way to the hospital. In Vietnam, we were able to put patients inside helicopters, and they got some care en route. And we had people that were not doctors and that were not nurses that were trained to stop bleeding and give oxygen and give IV fluids. And this concept of a medic started to develop. As I look at the history of our MSP program, I think of it in 4 periods of development. Our Jet Ranger years, our Dauphine years, our AW-139 years, and now our Whole Blood years. Our Jet Ranger years were from 1970 to 1989. We eventually developed the Aviation Trauma Tech Certification, an ATT, which is essentially a basic life support certification with a few advanced things thrown in. We had a cardiac monitor on board, but no defibrillator. It was believed that defibrillating on a helicopter was dangerous, that the patient litter was not grounded from the rest of the navigational equipment. In other parts of the United States at that time, it was policy that if a patient needed to be defibrillated, the helicopter would land, they would do the defibrillation, and then get back in the air again. So the focus, again, was on rapid transport during these years. And as we continued with this effort and expanded the number of bases, in 1986 we had a crash. Medic TFC Kerry Petzman, Pilot Corporal Greg May lost their lives. And we come back to those words: if tragedy strikes, don't lose hope. Transform it into an opportunity to make things better. Those are the words of the Dalai Lama. And in fact, that's what happened. The helicopter program was reviewed by an outside expert panel. They recommended increasing the crew certification to an EMT paramedic, having a full-time medical director, increasing the minimal helicopter flight hour requirements to 2,000 hours for new pilots, and having aircraft that were truly capable of instrument flight. And we entered then the Dauphine era, which was from 1989 to 2013. We focused on increasing our care to the ASLS level and worked hard to gain experience and expertise. Initially, our care was focused on stopping bleeding, administering oxygen and IV fluids, treating pain, placing anti-shock trousers, and performing basic endotracheal intubation. But the patients that were pretty much still alive and able to have muscle tone and resist having a breathing tube put down their throat, we weren't able to do so much for them. So we developed a pilot program for nasotracheal intubation. And we also developed a pilot program for what we call needle chest decompression, to be able to relieve life-threatening pressure building up in the chest of certain patients. And both of these things went on to become part of all Maryland medical protocol to be able to be used by all paramedics in the state. And then in 1998, we started the first pilot program of pre-hospital rapid sequence intubation, first for adults, then for children. And this was essentially doing what an anesthesiologist does in the operating room, to be able to put a patient to sleep and then give them medication to relax all their muscles, essentially paralyze their muscles, and then take over their breathing. We were making very good strides in our medical care. Things were going on well. And then, as you've heard, in 2008, we experienced another crash and the loss of Steve Bunker and Mickey Lippy and Tanya Mellard and Ashley Younger. Again, the words of tragedy strikes, don't lose hope, transform it into an opportunity and make things better. Or said another way, out of the ashes arises the phoenix. You might be familiar with this expression from Greek or Egyptian mythology. I had no Greek or Egyptian mythology in my training, but I was familiar with Harry Potter, where the phoenix also arose. So as a result of the crash of Trooper 2, there was an advisory panel of national experts that brought together a careful review of our state medevac program with some specific recommendations. This led to the creation of an EMS work group within the state legislature, and this group worked closely with the governor's office to provide direction and funding to implement improvements. Ultimately, the AW-139 aircraft became our Phoenix that arose from the ashes. In reality, the improvements were much more than just a more powerful aircraft with additional space for patient care, and also improved navigational equipment to allow more precise flight under instrument conditions. It was also the addition of a second pilot for a challenging flight profile, where 99% of our flights involve landing in a field or a roadway or a parking lot, often at night, with only 1% going from one hospital helipad to another helipad. In fact, if you look throughout the world, 2 pilots are required when flying at night at most countries in Europe and many other countries throughout the world. It was also the purchase of a flight training device so our pilots could train to a level of true comfort in navigation under instruments and perform emergency procedures under conditions that could only be experienced in a simulated environment. And it was the crucial addition of a second medical crew member to allow us to train as a team and provide care as a team. This allowed us to be able to quickly assess our patients and simultaneously perform any necessary critical interventions before moving them to the aircraft. And if needed, we were now able to place them on an advanced ventilator using strategies tailored to their specific conditions as we continued to monitor them and provide any additional necessary critical interventions while in flight. The ability to work as a team allowed us to take the additional challenge of creating and maintaining a blood on board program to be able to transfuse whole blood to patients in hemorrhagic shock. Whole blood is simply blood that hasn't been separated into components, and therefore it replaces the blood cells and the plasma and the platelets that the patient is losing. We began carrying whole blood 3 years ago at this point. We've transfused, as of last night, 337 patients with 435 units of blood. And we have circulated 1,708 units of not yet expired blood back into the hospital for use in shock trauma without any units having been wasted. This has been a true game changer for our patients. I feel that it's brought us into a new era of patient care. Our flight paramedics are literally seeing patients improve before their eyes, and patients who previously would have died are now surviving and going home from the hospital. Just as an example to close here, we had a teenager who was unconscious with a weak pulse and very low blood pressure following a crash. We started giving him a unit of blood in the ambulance, moved him to the aircraft, and went on to give him a second unit in flight. Initially, it seemed as though we were going to need to also take over his breathing as his breaths were becoming more and more shallow. But then they started to improve. During the second unit of blood, his blood pressure was better, and he began to open his eyes. Our flight medic leaned over and shouted in his ear and explained to him that he had been in a crash and we were taking him to the hospital. As we were getting close to the hospital and ready to land, we could see that he was trying to say something. Our crew member bent over to try to hear what he was saying and heard the patient say, "I hope I get a pretty nurse." So to conclude, today we gather to recognize this milestone for Trooper 2 and also for our stadium assistant. Trooper 2 is just another one of our 7 bases, yet it is also more. It represents the first step in our advance from one helicopter bringing patients to one trauma center to ultimately having a statewide medevac system that brings patients to multiple hospitals according to their needs. Trooper 2 also represents the Phoenix that arose from tragedy to bring us where we are today. God willing, may we continue to evolve without tragedy to meet the needs of our patients. Thanks for listening. I now have the pleasure of Introducing Pilot Dan McDonald. Mac is our Assistant Chief Pilot, and he's also head of training for our new pilots as they come into the Aviation Command.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. Welcome to the 55th anniversary celebration of Trooper 2, the Maryland State Police Aviation Command's Washington, D.C. section. When I was originally asked to speak today, a lot of things ran through my mind: honor, nervous, confusion, and the dominant thought was, why me? What of value do I have to offer this audience at an event of this magnitude? As any good Marine would do, I sought counsel from my senior leadership, I spoke to mentors, and most importantly, I asked my wife. I think my job here today is to be the poster child, or maybe the public face, of Trooper 2's legendary mission success and accomplishments. In this new self-appointed role as the team mascot, my name is not important, but maybe, hopefully, my story is. As you listen to my story, I implore you, remember the one critical truth. This is not a singular anomaly. My life is just one story meant as a representation of the thousands of identical miracles that happen each and every year across this great state. Saturday, January 9th, 1988, was a typical cold Carroll County winter's day. It was breezy. There was a couple inches of snow on the ground, and the puddles were frozen and ice lined the edges of the road. I was a typical, somewhat responsible 16-year-old high school kid, a junior with a muscle car. It was a 1985 two-door Ford Escort. Now, this is where it gets a little bit more provocative. I was driving home from an algebra study session. Yes, honestly, a study huddle for Algebra 2, trying desperately to impress my all-time favorite teacher, Dr. Howard Mangle. While attempting to negotiate an uphill, sweeping left-hand turn of 60 degrees on London Bridge Road, an oncoming loaded 18-wheeler truck decided that it wanted to get intimate with my Ford Escort. The 90-degree corner of that truck's front bumper crashed directly into my driver's door, AKA my left hip. All of Newton's laws were immediately validated. The Escort did not fare well, and I guess to be blunt, neither did I. As the frame of my car crumbled around me, my seat-belted body first went through the driver's side window, which had previously been closed. Then, of course, it went through the front windshield. To be honest, I don't have a lot of memories surrounding the event. I have amnesia, but I have read the book. To keep things sanitized, let's just say I was immediately in shock. There were lots of broken bones, a severely deformed and dislocated left shoulder, and a little bit of internal bleeding. There was a compound lower mandible fracture, all complicated and topped by a severe closed head trauma. Ultimately, I ended up in a coma, and much later, my family would be encouraged, in air quotes, to keep any expectations of recovery reasonable. The first responder on the scene that day wanted to send me to the local hospital via ambulance, and that made a lot of sense as it was the closest. Luckily, the truck driver that had treated my Ford Escort like a speed bump was EMT trained and active. He recognized the seriousness of my condition, and through a mysterious and unconventional use of his trucker's CB radio, he set in motion a course that allowed a trooper medevac aircraft to arrive at my location. Numerous doctors have reviewed the medical files regarding the events that day, and there is unanimous consensus that had I gone to my local hospital via ground transportation, I simply would not have survived. And as you know from TV advertising, getting greater than 4 to 5 doctors to agree on anything, nearly impossible. The Trooper Medevac helicopter that amazingly appeared at the scene of my accident site provided both superior patient care and a vastly reduced transit time to the only hospital facility capable of dealing with a patient at my level of trauma. After arriving at shock trauma, my post-accident good fortunes continued. When Dr. Paul Manson, the director of plastic surgery and a now world-renowned pioneer in craniofacial and reconstructive surgery, took a very active interest in my case. Dr. Manson was all too eager to break out his erector set, and he immediately began rebuilding my body and facial structure with pins, plates, and screws. I stand before you today, alive, due to the world-class efforts and capabilities at every level of the Maryland EMS system, and in no small way, particularly thanks to the Maryland State Police Aviation Command's Medevac Life Flight program, like Trooper 2. By means of a closing, I'd like to leave everybody with a rhetorical question. Do you believe in chance? Personally, I don't think I do, at least not in the traditional sense. Patterns govern our world. The universe runs on cold, beautiful mathematics. Cause and effect stack up like dominoes. The Aviation Command and Trooper 2 do not leave outcomes to chance. Success has been built on discipline, training, teamwork, and an unwavering commitment to service. Trooper 2 has stood ready to answer the call for 55 years, not by chance. The dedication to the mission, their professionalism, has directly impacted thousands of patients' lives and tens of thousands of additional Maryland family members. I'm honored to be associated with Trooper 2, the Aviation Command, and all dedicated EMS professionals who continuously place service above self. Congratulations, Trooper 2, on a job well done.
Thank you to everybody we've heard from thus far. But today, as we recognize the crews of Trooper 2, we also recognize our elected leaders who share in our commitment of public safety. I'd now like to introduce you to Maryland's representative for District 47 in Prince George's County, Maryland State Senator Malcolm Augustine, followed by our Prince George's County delegate representing District 24, Derek Coley.
Thank you, Elena. It's really very, very challenging to follow what all of you have said so beautifully, particularly Pilot McDonald. It was just a really very powerful story. I will say I'm very pleased to be here with the Lieutenant Governor, with the Colonel, Pastor Adams, and Dr. Flocare, and other obviously distinguished guests who are amongst us. I'm also just very pleased to see Prince George's County Fire and EMS Chair, Mimi Michaelides here, so I just hope y'all give her a round of applause too. I know that Delegate Mark Chang was already mentioned, but we also are joined by Delegate Daryl Odom, who is also representing us on Prince George's County, so I'm really pleased that you're here too. So. As I said, there's not a whole lot of more really to be said. The first thing that I will though say is just, for the pilots and everybody who's here, I just say thank you for sure for putting your life on the line for us. It's something that I don't do, and I just don't take it for granted. I don't think that any of us take for granted the fact that you all do that. And it's kind of a solemn situation for sure, but I will tell you, I live in Cheverly, and we used to have you guys fly over our heads over the time, and I can say I'm not too sad that you aren't there anymore, because you guys were there like literally every single day, literally like landing in my house. But you were doing it for a really just an unbelievable cause. You guys were just saving lives, and I just think that this is something that we can't, we just can't say thank you enough to you guys for you all for doing that. And we are here today, obviously, to honor, Trooper 2, which is right here coming out of Prince George's County in Washington, D.C. And I just always say to people, we just have the very best, which was already said, not going to repeat too much, we just have the very best world-class trauma care, aviation in the world. And we just love to be so to brag about how great you all are. And I'm really just honored to just pay tribute to you and to all of the members of our state police, and just to say thank you. As I said, just thank you so much for just putting your lives on the line for us, and know that we are just pleased to be partners with you all, and that we are here to provide the resources that are necessary and needed for you to complete your mission, and whatever law, statutory language, and things like that that are there to be able to be a good partner with you all. And so I just say really thank you once again, and I just will ask my colleague, Delegate Daryl Coley, to come on up. Thank you so very much.
Good evening, everyone. Delegate Derek Coley, and it is indeed an honor and privilege to be here. I have the distinct honor and privilege of presenting the citation on behalf of the Prince George's County delegation. Delegate Daryl Odom, come up as well. And also Sergeant Reggie Singleton. Fire Chief, you answered the call years ago. The department answered the call when Trooper 2 went down. Please come up, Fire Chief Michaelides. Also, Superintendent Colonel Jackson, please come up as well. And the citation, and the Commander, Tagliaferro, please come up as well, sir. The citation reads as such. The Maryland General Assembly official citation, be it hereby known to all that sincerest congratulations are offered to Maryland State Police Aviation Command Troop in recognition of the 55th anniversary of the Maryland State Police Aviation Command Troop 2, Washington Section, honoring decades of life-saving service, aerial support, and steadfast dedication to the citizens of Maryland and the Capital Region on June 3rd, 2026. Again, Trooper 2, Aviation Unit, thank you for all you do.
I'd now like to invite up here Major Michael Tagliaferro, our Aviation Commander, along with Trooper 2's non-commissioned officer in charge, Sergeant Reginald Singleton, to the podium for a special presentation.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. On behalf of the Maryland State Police Aviation Command and the Maryland Department of State Police, we'd like to thank Chesapeake Bay Sox for hosting us at such an incredible celebration here. So thank you very much for being here.
Mr. Shane Tattoo. As a thank you for letting us use your facility, we would like to leave you with something great. Thank you, thank you for making our 55th celebration a wonderful event. We would like to personally give you one of these for yourself as well, and one to hang somewhere in the stadium. Absolutely. And we truly appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Before we go out to visit Trooper 2 and their crew, I'd like to invite Pastor Adams back to the podium for our benediction.
The beginning and the end. And I appreciate that. But before I give a blessing for you to travel back to your homes or your job or wherever it may be, I just want to say thank you for today. I have learned a great deal today about the mission that I serve as chaplain and its history. When I go to be with the crew or the command staff, or to spend a whole afternoon with the mechanics, they're very important as well. I am moved by what I see, the dedication, the pride in what those men and women do, the hard work that they put in, the care that they put in, because these machines are not slapped together. They are precision made, way beyond what our automobiles are, because they do not stay in the air when the engine quits. And so it's always wonderful for me to spend time with the crew. And as I listen today, folks, these are real people. They're human beings who have hopes and dreams and fears and energy. They get tired, they get exhausted, they get exasperated, they get upset with the people they work with. They love the people that they work with. They're like every one of us. And one of the folks that we need to recognize today is the family of these men and women and the children of these men and women. As a pastor who was called out in the middle of the night sometime for the state police, I recognize the sacrifice that families make. Thank you. In behalf of those of us who serve in the Maryland State Police, thank you for your love, your understanding, your forgiveness, and your grace. It is wonderful to be a part of this ministry, and I call it a ministry. It's not just a service to the people. It's doing God's work to save lives and to help people. So receive this benediction, all of you, and those who are not here. There's a whole group of folks that are on duty right now. Some may be making flights, carrying people to hope and new life. Let us pray. As we leave this gathering, may we carry the spirit of hope and healing forward. May the Lord bless and keep the crews who answer the call when time is running out. May you grant continued healing, O Lord, and strength to those who have survived tragic accidents. And let us go forth now with a renewed commitment to protect, support, and care for one another. And so, folks, go in peace, knowing that in moments of crisis, courage and compassion will always rise to meet the need. May God bless you, your families, and the skies above us. Would you all say amen to this? Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Adams. Now that the program has ended, we invite everybody out to BJ's parking lot. As you're leaving the stadium, it's the first right into a parking lot. You'll see our Trooper 2 has landed there and our crew is waiting to meet you. So thank you again for attending today. Have a good day.